All right, so I left off here with where the shot was fired, and I got Dr. Hood was the doctor who testified at the trial, and he talks about where the shot was taken. And Dr. Hood's testimony states about the shooter. It was right up on the person. Would not have been outside the hallway when the shot was taken. So it was right up on the person. So it was point blank, right up on the person. All right, and the firearms expert had the same statement. Let's put it this way. Ballistic science is ballistic science. The individual was shot point blank range in the face. So like I said, that's why I'm so, I get perturbed about when they start saying that the shot was taken out here. It doesn't matter anything about anything out here. There was blood splatter up to, I believe, this first bedroom. That was as further as it went because obviously the head's pressurized, so you have some blowback. There was no blood down. It was furthest was right here in this area here. If I'm not mistaken, that was testified to. You got the shell casing right here. You got the close contact wound to the face right here. There was no shot taken back here. In my opinion, the reason why they said that was because they wanted to say that Alfonso, being in this area, that they saw him pull the gun from his waistband and take the shot. And the shot, they said, was fired from the table at the beginning of the hallway. It's just ballistically impossible. So it didn't happen. And even the attorney, Jack McMahon, the defense attorney, says, what was his arm, 10 or 12 feet long in order to be down here? And that was his closing statements. So that was ignored. That was totally ignored. The ballistic science was totally ignored when it comes to all this. And another thing, there's when he's talking, Alex is talking about he witnessing the gun, about seeing the gun. This is a questioning between the defense attorney and Alex with the gun, as far as the gun goes. Question: and described what he was holding for us. It was a black pistol. Did you get a good look at it? Yes, sir. From where you were, how far away were you? Answer: Alfonso was only like a foot or two away from me. So that's what he's saying. It's in this area here. So he says, okay. Question is, okay, showing you what's been marked and received as C8 for identification. Does this appear to be the weapon that you saw that night? And he says, answer, no, sir. Question, that does not appear to be the weapon? Answer, no. The other gun looked bigger. Question, it looked bigger to you? Answer, yes. So he can't even identify what the gun is. He says he got a really good look at it. He's a foot or two away from him. Remember, he's at the table with Steve in the initial, and Alfonso, Alfonso's back here. Mendez Thomas is here. This is the initial at the table with the drug transaction. He backs up, takes 3 steps, takes off. So he's saying that Alfonso comes over and she says the same thing, pulls a gun from his waistband. He's saying he can't even identify the gun. So, and that's what he's testifying to. He can't even identify the gun. So, I want to go into, there's many things I want to touch on. There's a lot in this case. There's a lot of testimony that makes no sense. There's a lot of things that go on in this whole entire job that make no sense. And as I said, when I go back to my original tape, my opinion, believe this was a ruse robbery setup involving Steve, Alex, and Jessica, who brought these people here. And I'll explain a little bit more about how that went about. I touched on it, but I can go into depth more about what I believe happened with the gun, meaning Mendez Thomas's gun and her hiding the gun. I believe, my opinion, she hid the gun. So, because, I'll go into that. All right, so we want to go into Jessica. Now, I want to start talking about Jessica and her injury. I'm going to go into the doctor's testimony of her injury. I got that here, and I want to go into that, and I also want to talk about what I saw. I saw a scratch on her knee. That's what I saw. That's why I totally, when I got there, I saw this little scratch on her knee, and then her being uncooperative and stalling, and knowing that she's automatically a suspect, and then seeing that what she's doing, and then realizing, hey, she's part of this job. And she gets a Band-Aid at the scene, and then she's sent to the hospital. This is what Dr. Hood testifies in trial about the injury. He says, it was a minor little scrape. Minor little scrape. He stated, it was on the outside aspect of her right knee. and it was a very superficial grazing wound. And the records clearly indicate that it didn't need much in the way of treatment. Just an antibiotic ointment and a dressing. Yeah, Band-Aid, like I said. And they spent most of the time dealing with her mental condition. That's what the doc is testifying to. Just like I said, just like when I went back to my headquarters and said, hey, this girl needs to be brought back here immediately, or I'm going to go get her. And Lieutenant Springfield said, no, don't go get her, John. We'll get her brought here. She never comes. None of that ever happens. She makes a new story up. And then all of a sudden, all these people start getting their story straight, and then everything starts changing. And then you got all this going on here. So you got a lot of things going on. She doesn't have a gunshot wound. Now, whoever's saying, you know, the doctor never states that he says a grazing wound. What is a grazing wound? What does that mean? What does that mean? You know, a grazing wound. Well, I'm going to tell you what Detective Boston testifies to. Detective Boston is one of the crime scene people. He testifies to 4 rounds being fired in this area, right? 2 strike Lisa Diaz, the victim. 1 in the head, obviously. The first one hits her in the shoulder, for what we believe. Second one is the contact wound to the back of the head. All right? So 4 shots are fired. Well, this is what he testifies to. This makes sense, right? About the grazing, all right? It's a possibility. As far as I'm concerned, it's indeterminable as far as the injury to her knee. She could have hit her knee on the table on the way out. You know, who knows? But the bottom line is here's Detective Boston and the prosecutor, and they're testifying, and here's the question from the prosecutor. What is that? Answer. This is a section of the carpet in the living room where there was a bullet impact through the carpet, struck the concrete floor underneath the carpet, and fragmented. Well, he's telling you that one of the rounds struck the concrete floor. Remember, this is a basement apartment, so it's concrete walls, concrete floor. One of those rounds impacts the carpet, impacts the concrete floor, and it fragments. Fragments concrete, and it fragments shrapnel from the bullet. So, either one of those could have struck her knee. That could have been the grazing wound. It's possible. But it's indeterminable, meaning that it's a scratch on her knee. There's nothing embedded in her knee. There's no shot where it's through and through. She's walking all around all over the place. She wasn't shot. That's my opinion. She's not shot. This whole thing about she's shot in the knee, oh my God, no. I got 2 people with gunshot wounds to the head that are executed. I got her with a little scratch on the knee. This microscopic, what do you say, superficial injury to the knee. Just like I said when I was on scene. So that's a possibility that it's fragmented from the concrete, but we can't determine anything. But I can tell you right now, when I took many people to ER Trauma 1 units in Philly, they don't count exit wounds. They only count entrance wounds. The bullet enters the body. They don't count exit wounds because that's terminal ballistics. So a doctor is only going to count entrance wounds. It's got to go into the body. Now, I'm not a doctor, but that's what they tell me. If the wound goes in, a round projectile enters the body, that's a gunshot wound. You can say grazing, you can say whatever you want. But the bottom line is you can't determine that bullet was what caused that injury. That's why I have to really touch on this. Because in the newspapers and in everywhere, they got this girl as some hero, and they got this girl as she's shot in the knee. And I'm telling you that she was one of the people who set up her freaking sister, her half-sister, and her boyfriend. I don't want to get to about where I believe what happened with her setting him up and putting that gun up in that closet. So, all right. So, I'm going to go into this whole thing with Officer Harold and his experience, because I got to really talk about his experience here. And this pretty much sums up his experience as far as this patrolman. This is an officer, police officer, not a detective, never had any form of training, nothing. And he's running this double homicide job. When we have, 4 or 5 detectives in Warminster Police itself. Excuse me. And then we also have county detectives who have an umpteen amount of county detectives at their disposal, but they got 2 that were sent here for this job. You got a junior guy who's running this job, and they're his informants. So there's conflict of interest all over the place. Well, this pretty much sums up his experience for me. This is the question, and this is a double jeopardy here in 2016, I believe. Sir, just going back here to October of 2007, when this crime was committed, you said that was the first case that you were assigned to as lead investigator in a homicide. Fair to say? Yes, sir. Question. And could you briefly describe for the court what your duties would have been as lead investigator on this case? His answer. Officer Howard, his answer. I think he's a detective at this point, 2016, they promote the guy. whatever. So, but at the time, he was only a patrolman. Answer. I like to look at it as we would be the head of an octopus. The head of an octopus, so to speak. With Marty and I be the coordinating all the information coming in, then the other tentacles, that's what he said, of that would make us aware of what is going on, or we would coordinate what was sent or done. Huh? I mean, he just said that a homicide investigation is like an octopus. I mean, this isn't SeaWorld. I mean, this is what he said. He said this is an octopus with tentacles. And then, as you know what's going to happen, the federal public defender now, throughout this hearing, he continues to bring up octopus. He continues to ask Officer Harold about the octopus thing. He actually says, you know, since the DA's involved, isn't it a 3-headed octopus instead of a 2-headed octopus? I mean, it gets ridiculous. It gets really ridiculous. So, that pretty much sums up his experience for me. Is that he doesn't even know what he's doing. Like he doesn't even, and all these years later, he's either promoted, he still doesn't know what he's doing. So he's an octopus. So you have Lisa Diaz here, who you know is clearly, you know, I mean, she's executed. Mendez Thomas is executed, and they walk right into a trap. They walk right into this trap. You know, a ruse robbery. You know, you lure unsuspecting victims into a trap. That's basically what happened. They lured them right in, and it was a trap, and they killed them. So we're going to go into the threats that happened with Lisa Diaz here. These are some of the threats. Now, she had several threats that happened with her. As I said before, Michael Thompson's house. This is a report that was in the PCRA, the Post-Conviction Relief Act. Police reported and learned that co-worker Michael Thompson on the night of the murders. Thompson spoke with Miranda both before and after the murders on 10/16/07. This is the report. Specifically, Thompson stated that Miranda and 3 friends came over to Thompson's house before the shooting and had started talking about a woman who owed Miranda money. Thompson reported that Steve was very angry and pulled out a handgun. Steve said he was going to get his money and take care of her. At around 12:15, just after the shootings, Thompson reported that Miranda called him and said something bad, really bad had happened, and asked him for a ride. All right, so that's what Mr. Thompson said, and that was documented. Now, this in the PCRA, you also have this Jackie Bowman, who's apparently his girlfriend at the time, Steve Miranda's. Mrs. Bowman gives a statement that she had dated Miranda the weeks leading up to the murders. She says Miranda pulled a gun on her and asked her, "What's the setup?" Goes back to the setup. You got a setup, right? He's asking her about the setup weeks before the murders. When she innocently picks him up one day. She told him he was delusional, and he told her not to tell anyone. She stated witnessing him act irrational when he took cocaine, and Miranda told her that he was crazy. So you got that as well. And then you have this guy, Hassan Towns. He's some other guy in the neighborhood over there. He's also brought in by Detective John Slaughter. He makes a statement on 11/1, and he says that this is in the homicide discovery packet. He reports that witnesses recount in detail that Miranda hid a gun at a Kirsten greenhouse, her home or something, and that Miranda ordered his sister to go retrieve the gun. So that's just some of the different threats. Now, there's another threat that I'm going to get to that's in here too. I just got to find it in my notes here. I'm trying to, let me see here. I'm almost there. There's so many different things in this job, it's unreal. All right, well, I'm going to find it. I'll find it. All right, so let me get back to, until I find this, let me get back to Detective Boston. So Detective Boston is very interesting because Detective Boston here, I had mentioned in the first statement, I mean the first tape, I had mentioned about this. I you know, assume nothing, investigate, process everything, everyone goes homicide, and then when in doubt, process it out. I had explained about the altercation here that took place. I didn't know what I had, I wasn't sure. But I went back and I told the crime scene people that were inside the unit here. You know, I told the medics about it. They obviously did their job. There was DNA recovered from the coroner. I come back in here and I start talking to them. Now, this is very interesting because this is what I believe solidifies my talking to these guys. And then, because I wasn't involved with the case, I was never interviewed, I was never involved with the job at all. I was taken off of it immediately. So anyway, so this is Detective Boston when he testifies. And he testifies to this altercation. Detective Boston testifies to receiving information about a short altercation from a witness while on the scene of the double murders. Now, this is what he states here. Detective Boston is testifying, and the question is, you didn't know that. You didn't talk to the witness, did you? Now, this is defense counsel asking him a question. So you didn't know that, you didn't talk to the witness, did you? And his answer is no, the information was relayed to me. All right? So it further goes on that question. You're telling me that when you're in there doing this crime scene, that you're you're being given information of things that were being touched and not being touched by a witness to this case. Is that what you're telling us? You didn't have that information? Answer. What I'm telling you is that when we're doing a crime scene, information is flowing in both directions. I'm receiving information as to what I should be looking for in the crime scene. I'm also relaying, informing as to what I may be looking for as suspects. Question. What did they tell you? What was told to you while you were getting this flow of information? His answer. Specifically, indications were that a number of suspects had entered the residence. All right, he says, question, right? Answer. There was a short altercation, the shooting, and then they fled. So this is Detective Boston, right, who is talking and testifying in 2008 about this 2007 shooting. And remember, I'm not interviewed. My statement, I don't know where Mr. McMahon, the attorney, the defense attorney, says he never got it. So he's going by what he remembers. He's talking about this altercation, this short altercation. And he's saying, you heard what he said. He said that he was given information about a short altercation and then some suspects. And it was relayed to him. It was relayed to him. What's coming from me? It's coming from, I'm the one who's coming in and talking to these people. I'm the only one who talked to Jessica and got any information out of her. I'm the only one who interviewed her on the scene and got that statement off of her about Steve being the shooter and the motive and all that. That's coming from me. And when I go in, I start talking to these guys, and I'm the one who's relaying the information to these folks. That's where it's pivotal as far as what Detective Boss is talking about. That's what he's talking about, and that's what he's saying. So, and it's clear that the DNA that comes up in this case, and that's that the DNA here is that Mr. McMahon states that he had gone to the prosecution when he was given the discovery packet for this job. He saw that there were some items that were turned into the state police lab, and when they were doing the state police lab, he went to the prosecutor and said, "Hey, look, where are these reports as far as these fingernails and these swabs and all this stuff that went up to the lab for processing? Where are the reports on this?" And the prosecutor says several times, nothing was processed. They didn't process anything. So Mr. McMahon actually testifies to this in the double jeopardy hearing. He states that he states that he was lied to, that he went to him several times and that he asked about these items that were up at state police, and he was told that they were never processed. That they were, he don't know what to tell him. That that they were never processed. So we never got it. We never got anything with the DNA because he said it was never processed. So he doesn't think that the stuff was ever processed. Well, it was. State police ended up processing all this stuff. So the timeline shows that there's a timeline here where you got Detective Benargo who goes and takes these reports up. So he takes these reports up to he takes the evidence, up to state police. So here is some of the questions, and here are some of his answers as far as the evidence and it being taken up to PSP, because the Detective Benargo was the one who obviously was the guy who was assigned to take the evidence up there. Him and actually Detective Schlatter actually also went up when they had to take the blood up for the DNA analysis. Detective Benargo took Detective Schlatter up with him one day, so that they could go up and drop off the blood, so they could get the samples, so they could do the DNA comparisons. So there was two detectives at one point that both had taken up evidence, and the evidence, I don't know. They said they didn't know nothing about it. That the supervisors and Officer Harold and all the rest of the people in this job said they knew nothing about evidence, didn't know where it was, didn't know that it was ever taken. You know, that basically that Benargo was rogue, that he was just doing everything on his own. He was just doing everything on his own. Nobody was telling him, and he was just, you know, it's all on him. And obviously Schlatter was doing everything on his own too, because he went with him one time. So they're both rogue. They're both running around doing whatever they want. So here's the question. Here's the questions that are answered at the Double Jeopardy hearing. All right, question. And just looking at the submission form itself, it appears you, in fact, submitted those items, and it looks like at least this form was received on or about November 28th of 2007. Fair to say? Yes, sir. Question. And in fact, at the bottom of the 3 pages is an indication that it looks like you retrieved the items as you testified to on direct at September 4th of 2008. Is that correct? Yes, sir. So what ended up happening was he actually picked up, the case was supposed to start September 8th, 2008. September 8th. He went and picked up evidence from the state police lab and brought it down on September 4th, 4 days before the trial, right? But the storyline is that he's doing everything on his own. Like, nobody's telling him to do this. He's just going and doing it. So he goes up, picks up the state police stuff, and he brings it down on September 4th for the trial to start on the 8th. So, and then he forgets who told him. He doesn't know much. He doesn't know what's going on. So, but November 28th is when he dropped it off, when he first took everything up. And that's interesting because he accesses my report, and I'm going to go into that. He accesses my report on December 6th of 2007. So he drops the evidence off on November 28th, and then he goes into my report. 8 days later, he goes into my report, and it's indicated, it's timestamped on my report. Now, also, I have to go into, and I will, my report's incomplete. Like, I don't remember, I wrote more than 3 paragraphs. And I put in there things that I knew immediately weren't there, which was Jessica's suspect. And I didn't go into crazy elaborate, because there was other reports that I wrote, which were supplementals. The initial summary was just what happened, but it was brief but it was more than 3 paragraphs. It wasn't no 1 page. So the top of my report, you'll see in the corner, you'll see BON 159, which is Benargo's badge number, and then it'll say timestamped, and it'll have 12/6 of 07. So he dropped the evidence off on November 28th of 07, then he goes into my report on 12/6. He didn't have anything to do with me. He never interviewed me. Nobody interviewed me. So why is he in my report? I have no idea. You'd have to ask him that. I don't know. So he's in my report. Takes a copy of it. I have no idea. So so he ends up doing the September 4th. He picks up the evidence. Well, here's the next question. And that was regarding what your department wanted to have done with the items that had been submitted by you. Would that be fair to say? He says yes. All right. So he's acknowledging that somebody's saying for him to do this. And a question. And they told you that there was certain items they felt would be viable for further DNA testing, and some they felt would be viable for further testing, not viable for further testing, further DNA testing. Fair to say? And he says correct. So the state police is telling him some things can go forward, excuse me, to be tested, other things can't. So it ends up that the fingernails actually go on and they get tested, and they have the DNA comes back. Question: what did you do with that information? In other words, where were you the one that made the decision on whether or not to go forward with further testing, or would that have been a Sergeant Selisker or someone else to make that decision? So the federal defender's asking him who makes that decision. So his answer is, I would have been waiting for someone to let me know whether they wanted to or not. I don't believe that it would have been Sergeant Selisker, though. Question, do you have any idea who it would have been? Answer, one of the affiants in the case. Question, so perhaps Detective Harold? Answer, yes. That could have been one person, yes. So he is acknowledging the way I'm getting out of this. Detective Benargo is thrown under the bus. He's already thrown under the bus. Like, he's already been tossed under the bus. So, because everybody else testifies to this, Harold and McDonough and Selisker, and nobody knows what's going on with the DNA. Nobody knows anything about it. They didn't even know that any DNA ever went to PSP. But clearly, you know, from what I'm getting out of it, my opinion, he's saying that somebody told him to take the evidence up there. He didn't just do it on his own. And that he is saying that it wasn't Sergeant Selisker, but he's saying it was one of the affiants. That's what I'm getting out of it, right? So, the DNA goes missing, or it gets lost, or whatever, for, I believe, 8 years. I found out about this job in 2015 when the Federal Public Defender's House come to my house. And you know, in the middle of summer in August, and they come to me, they show me a report, and the DNA wasn't in the picture at that point. It was just my report. They were asking me if my report was legit, and did I write this? And I said, yeah, and I told them that, you know, the report, I wrote that, but it was incomplete, and the investigator asked me why, and I said, well, it's only 3 paragraphs. I said, right away, I immediately recognized that I wrote things about Jessica in the report immediately, because she was my prime suspect. Right? I mean, immediately she's at the scene, and so I wrote in there that she was a suspect in the case, in that summary, you know, because it was pivotal for them to bring her in, to question her further. So I was putting it in my summary. So I know when I didn't see anything about Jessica, I knew there was an issue with it right away. And then as far as with Mr. Saucerman, they didn't even say that he even called. Like, the paragraph doesn't even have him even calling. Like, he was the first caller. And I know I wrote that in there. That's pivotal, and it's not even in there. And the way that it's set up, it's 3 paragraphs, and it makes a full page. But there's a header at the top, and the header kind of fills the page out. So there's a header at the top, and it basically has my name and the department and the WT number, the case number, has the date and time. I never do any headers. I never put any headers in any of that. This is all interdepartmental stuff. Yeah, it's going to be used in court, but there's no need for that. It's all in the paragraphs. It's all there. I don't need to do that. I don't put a header on anything. So immediately I went and I asked the detectives, hey, did somebody touch my report? You know, I'm not saying that somebody redacted anything. I'm just saying that it's incomplete. Did somebody go into my report and just think that, oh, this is not important, so I'm going to take things out or whatever? So I went and I asked. So after I talked to the investigator, I call up immediately to my chief, and I tell my chief, these people are in my house, and they're talking about the 2007 case. They're saying Alfonso Sanchez is on death row, and you know, and that's what? And he says, yeah. So right away, I'm like, what's going on with this job? So I said, Miranda was the shooter. He's like, oh, no, Miranda wasn't a shooter. He's like, I don't know, John. This is Chief Donnelly at the time, and he's the lieutenant back then. But he's the chief now, and he says, oh, no, I don't know nothing about that job, John. I don't know. I didn't do that job. I don't know anything about it. I wasn't in charge of it. Lieutenant Springfield was in charge of it, blah, blah, blah. I said, but, you know, I'm thinking to myself right away. I'm like, yeah, okay, but I talked to you that night. Like, I talked to you on the radio. Like, I was on the radio talking to you, telling you we had 2 5292s, and you're talking back and forth to me on the radio. So how you didn't know anything about the job, and then I see you at the job, and then you come in, like, you don't know nothing about the job. So anyway, I can see people are stepping away from it. They're just backing away. So he tells me he's going to put Sergeant Selisker on the phone. Sergeant Selisker gets on the phone. Sergeant Selisker asks me what's going on. I tell him that these people are here. I said, my report's incomplete. You know, I want to see my report. So he says, well, that's all we got. That's all we got. So I'm like, well, so you know, I'm pretty much irritated, and I'm angry at the situation. I don't know what's going on. And, you know, and he tells me on the phone, he says, you know, John, don't worry about it. And then he says, statute of limitations is going to run out on this job. Nobody's going to get in trouble. So don't worry about it. Ha, 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 ha. And he starts laughing. So I'm pissed off. Like, I'm like, what is he talking about? So I actually, you know, I hang up on him and I call back to the chief and I tell the chief, hey, what is this guy saying about the statute of limitations and all this? Now, I knew what he meant. I knew what he meant about the statute of limitations because in 1993, when they had all this stuff going on, right, with this West Coast video with the emergency stuff, there's something separate happened. Now, when I started up there, I didn't know much about what was going on with this whole place because I didn't even know where Warminster was. But when I went up there and they told me about, the case and the job and, you got an order if you run any of these jobs, anything serious, homicide, you run it the way you were taught in the city. When I was up there for about a year or so, they started talking about 1993 about officers that were involved with these crimes against kids, this stuff that was going on back to the 70s. So, the joke, this sick joke that was at my department was that the statute of limitations ran out and nobody got in trouble. And this is like a sick joke that was up there with these guys who've been there for years. So like that was like one of these weird like caveats that everybody just kind of like was like, what are you talking about? But apparently these officers that were no longer officers, these people were apparently involved with some kind of crimes or whatever with these kids. I don't know. And the statute of limitations ran out on it and these people were never prosecuted. And, it went from the top on down. So, that was what I got out of it when he said that, statute of limitations ran out. That's exactly what he was talking about because that was the little joke that went around with these people that had been there and Sergeant Sells Group there for years. So when he tells me about that, immediately I'm angry about everything, but I want to know where my report's at. I want to know where my report's at and I want to know where the 2006 robbery job is because now everything starts coming back to me. So now I go up to headquarters. So I go up to headquarters. I don't know if it was the next day or whatever, but I go up to headquarters because the DA's office wants to see me. They call me in. I'm talking to the one of the young ADAs. She has no idea what I'm talking about. She knows nothing about. She even said, "What did you do? Like, what were you on the job? You were there. You weren't." She wasn't even sure if I was even there. Then she says, "Oh, this statement, buzz." And I told her, I said, "Yeah, I was taken off the job. I was in trouble. I got in trouble for telling that officer to stay outside." So they removed me, so she had no clue. Like her look was just like, "What? What are you talking about?" So that was the first interaction I had with the DA's office. But I had told McDonough, Detective McDonough was in the room. I told him, I said, "Hey," I said, "you were the one who told me to go downstairs and talk to you, and you never talked to me." And he goes, he just was like, everybody had this look on their face like they don't know anything about what I'm talking about. They don't know about nothing. Clearly, they didn't know nothing about the DNA either. So I end up having to go up to the police station. I don't know when that was, but I go up to the police station, and because I'm not getting the answers that I need, so I go up to the station, and I go in there. It's 15, or maybe it was 2016 at that point. But anyway, nevertheless, I go in there, and I go down to detectives, and I'm fuming. So I go down to detectives, and I go into detectives, and I start calling them all out. I want my reports. I want the 2006 robbery report. I want my full report. I want my supplements. I want everything. And they tell me that they can't give me anything. So I'm telling them at that point, you know what I mean? Like, you're involved. So Officer Harrell was a detective at the time. He's back in the back corner. And I'm basically telling them all that, what's going on here? What are you people doing? Like, what is going on? There's something going on. I knew something was up then, and I'm basically calling them all out. So the chief, Donnelly, comes down, and I actually get escorted out of the building. Like, they escort me out of the building. So I get taken, basically walked outside. So, and I'm basically telling them all, they're all full of crap, what's going on here, but this is before the DNA even comes out. So, actually, I believe it was 2016 at some time DNA comes out. So the DNA comes out, and then it's like, oh, now we got DNA. So now the DNA was from Lisa Diaz's right-hand fingernails. Apparently, what she did was she scratched the assailant. The assailant, and DNA and the blood tissue under her right-hand fingernails only come back to who? Steve Miranda. Go figure. So the DNA comes back to Steve Miranda. Well, that information, the DNA, all that, none of that was, they said it came out a day after the verdict came in. Day after the verdict came in, he was given the death penalty, this kid. He goes to death row for 9 years. I don't know what it was, 9, almost 10 years. This DNA sits there. It sits there. He says, the DA, I believe in the double jeopardy hearing, says that he faxed it over to Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon says, absolutely not, I never got it, never saw it. There's another appeal, because of course you got plenty of appeals. You got unlimited appeals for a death row case. So there's another appeal that's, I believe in 2013, there's an appeal. DNA never comes up in the appeal either. So, so this DNA is out there somewhere, lost, whatever, I don't know. It finally comes out, I believe, in 2016. Then in 2017, they vacate everything. They get rid of everything. Everything goes away. So they vacate the charges, they vacate the sentencing, they vacate everything, and then they put them in county jail. So And I knew that was going to be a problem. I knew right away. As soon as he went from state prison to county jail, I just knew, uh-oh. So he goes to county jail. So he's in Buck County. He's been in there. So I don't know. He's coming up with 14 years now. So this kid now has not only what I explained to you that happened at the scene and what I believe is going on, and what I also believe is, it goes back to the 2006 job. I feel, my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I feel that all these jobs are connected. And I'm gonna talk about more of the testimony and what's going on here as far as this. I believe that all of these jobs are linked, meaning the 2006 robberies, shooting Sullivan, and then you have the double murders. Now, and as I said, these guys, Steve and Alex, they get out of county jail, and then they immediately, pretty much, weeks, maybe a month or so before she gets killed, Lisa Diaz, they're terrorizing her. They're threatening her. There's a report. It's documented. Incident 90. They actually kidnap her. They pull up in a car. Steve's driving. There's a girl in the car, and Alex gets out of the car with a gun, goes up and kidnaps her, puts her in the car, and they drive off. This is all prior. Steve, there was another incident where it was reported in the PCRA, that incident, another incident where Steve puts a gun to her head. So you got all kinds of stuff going on prior to her being killed, right? So I want to know, first of all, these reports and police reports, how come they're not violated? They would be out on probation or parole, most likely probation because they went to county jail. So they'd be out on probation for the 2 armed robberies. How come they're not violated? How come Steve and Alex aren't brought in for all of these police-generated reports with guns, and they're not violated and sent back to county jail? That's number one. What's going on with that? So the bottom line here is that there's a lot of things going on, because I believe that it's all connected. I believe that when you have what's going on with these people being killed in this apartment, and this being a set-up robbery, ruse robbery, which is their MO, this is what these people do, there's a major problem. Because you have the lawsuit that's filed right after this on 10/24 of 07. They knew there was a lawsuit coming for the wrongful death for Sullivan. Then you have these two, Steve and Alex, go into this apartment and ruse robbery and kill these 2 people, right? So they got, and don't think, and I believe, my opinion, don't believe for 1 second, I don't believe for 1 second that both of these aren't armed. Both these people aren't armed. I mean, I can't prove that Alex is armed, but the bottom line is I remember him having a gun back here. This is what I remember. This is what I recall. These guys Steve and Alex treated themselves like they were brothers. They even considered themselves brothers. One was going to back the other one up. So, I mean, they go to a job and he doesn't have a gun. I just, that's my opinion. I believe that both of them were armed. When the shooting started, Alex fled. He sees Alfonso jump out, take off out the south side stairwell. Alex follows him. Alex testifies that who's he follow? Who's he go out? He makes up this story that Alfonso runs up and pulls a gun on him, and then he takes him and walks him in the back of the building, or runs off in the back. Some nonsense, some ridiculous nonsense. But it was clear that Alfonso ran out, in my opinion, and Alex runs out with him, leaving Steve back here to do what he needs to do, which is getting in a fight here with her. And you know what happened. You know what's going on here. There's an altercation. There's DNA. There's all that. So you got all kinds of stuff here, but like I said, I believe that all of these cases are all linked in. That all these people are all doing the same. They're all linked in here. That SIU takes over this job. Officer Harold is the lead investigator for his own informants, right? And he's running this whole job. They take me off immediately. I'm back to headquarters. I'm out. I'm going. I'm off the job. I'm not interviewed. I'm nothing. So I'm taking right off because I'm the one saying stuff. I'm the one saying, hey, look, this is a ruse robbery. These people are, you can't have Harold running this job with his own informants. So of course they're going to get rid of me. So they take me off the case right away. So the bottom line is they can't have SIU and this whole job. They can't have these two going in and killing her. And then they got the lawsuit, the wrongful death lawsuit on this kid. And then they got investigators, and they have a former U.S. attorneys and former, Eastern District United States Attorney. You got these people know what they're doing. You cannot have this going on here. They're going to find out what's going on, and you can't have these two be the shooter. Because then it doesn't make any sense where Sullivan's the one's got a BB gun, Sullivan's the one gets shot in the backyard, and these guys are doing, no. So for me, this just all starts to come together. You know, on why I was taken off the case and why I'm not a part of it. You know, it just, yeah, so it's just, but All right, let's cut it. We'll go to another segment because we got so much to do. We got so much here. There's so much.